Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our iHeartCountry book release party with Bobby Bones. Please welcome your host for tonight, Madison Vane from Esquire.
Hello, hello, hello. Hello to everyone here at the iHeartRadio Theater in New York City, as well as watching online. We are live on YouTube on the iHeartRadio Country channel. We are here, of course, to celebrate Bobby Bones and the release of his new book, Fail Until You Don't, Fight, Grind, Repeat. Bobby is here. We are going to chat all about the book, the making of it, and a few other projects he has going on. So with no further ado, maybe we can bring out Mr. Bobby Bones.
Wow, people came. I didn't want to look out in the room at first because I didn't know if anyone would be here. Is this one of those things where they get on Craigslist and say, we need extras, and then they pay people to come? Because if so, that's okay too. But hello, everyone. My name is Bobby. Thank you for being here. And this is a little weird for me to be on this side because usually here in this theater, I'm doing that, and nobody really cares about what I have to say. And so it's kind of the same thing, but still, thank you for being here tonight. Thank you. Okay, away we go.
I was actually going to ask you about that, how weird it is to have this whole role reversed on a press tour. We can wait until you get a mic again.
Glad you asked. Thank you.
Now that you have a mic, I was wondering what sort of the adjustment period is when you suddenly are answering questions instead of asking them and sort of like talking about yourself and your projects. It's got to be sort of a weird, mind-bending experience.
I'm not a big fan of having to talk about myself. Like, I talk about myself because I'm like, well, this might be interesting.
This is going to go super well for me.
Well, whenever the pressure's on to talk about myself, I tend to be a little embarrassed about it. But not when I feel like something is interesting, I like talking about it if it has to do with me. I don't feel like I'm terribly interesting, which is weird whenever you do books and comedy. Sure. But, yeah, it's awkward. Like, I'm a little awkward right now. So, next.
Now that we're feeling very confident. So I love this book. My favorite part is how it opens with you talking about how at the end of Bare Bones, you really didn't know if there was another chapter left in you. You know, we all get to that place with our craft and what we do. So I'm curious where you started, how you knew that you were onto something that was worth pushing that and going into a full book.
Well, so I wrote a first book called Bare Bones. And what happened with that book, well, thank you. Thank you. It's my cousin over here who started. So I wrote this book, and I really didn't have a plan to write that book either. I was trying to write a kid's book because I had just done a kid's record, and the record had done well. And so I thought, well, I want to write a kid's book to, be motivational and inspirational and even educational. So I went and I pitched this book at 8 different places. And everyone wanted to have the meetings, but nobody wanted to actually make the book. And so the last place that I went, they said, hey, why don't you do a story about your life? And I felt like I wasn't a Kardashian or an astronaut or anything that really people would care about. And so I said, let me see how it feels to write the book. And I started writing my story. And what I found was when I finished that book is that I felt like a lot of people wouldn't understand how I grew up and where I came from. Meaning I grew up in a really small town in Arkansas. I come from a background that wasn't always the easiest, but as I get older, I realize that we all come from backgrounds that are different and not always the easiest. But the things that I thought people wouldn't understand, people empathized the most with me. And not sympathized, but empathized. And when I talked about, the struggles I had with my mom before she died and not knowing my father, and even in the first book, the story about, me constantly bombing out different areas of my career. But then I was done. I had nothing else to write. Like, I was out. I was out 3/4 way through that book, the first book. And so I finished it, and I said, I'm never writing another book. The process was, I'm not like you. Like, I'm just not a good writer. And if you read the book, I don't write like someone who knows what they're doing. I use a lot of parentheses, and I go, squirrel! Like, I'm writing about this, and I'm like, oh, I have an idea, da-da-da-da-da. Oh, let's talk about Friends. And so I do that all through the book. And so I did that through the first book, and I was super surprised that it sold. And continued.
It sold very well.
And continue. No one was more shocked than me.
Okay.
So then I said, I'm never writing another book. Like, I was totally fine with being the Chumbawamba of books. One hit, and I was good, folks. That was it. I'm out. And so I'm done. And so the book company said, hey, your book is selling. You should write another book. Here's some money. And I'm like, I don't want it, because if I can't do something I'm proud of, in my career, I've never chased money, because I've never had money. So it's never hard to live without money when you never had money. Like, I was good at being poor. That for me, that's how I grew up. That was just normal. And so I never chased the money, and I did a TED Talk because I really like trying to inspire people that grew up from similar circumstances. Because I was never told what I could do. I was never told what I couldn't do. And I wanted to make sure that people knew, regardless of where you come from, you can do it. There may not be people around you that are doing it, because there was no one around me doing what I wanted to do. So no one said, hey, this is your ladder to get here. But I wanted people to know it doesn't matter where you come from. Like, there are different steps that you can take to get to your desired location. And so I did this TED Talk, and it was called Winning by Losing. And what I wanted to do was show that the most successful people aren't the people that were just really good at something. They're the people that had an idea, and they failed, and they improved, and they failed, and they improved. And I used people, at least in my 10-minute TED Talk, that I knew everyone would know. Like, I used Elvis Presley, he played the Grand Ole Opry, and they said, hey, don't come back. Like, you're not good, you know? I used Steve Jobs. I think his story is very familiar to a lot of us, especially that have seen the movie. And so I used a lot of people. And so then I started going, man, I can really write this because I feel the same way. I feel like people look at me and go, wow, look at this guy. He's kind of got it figured out. When I've never had it figured out. Right. You know, like, I am in, just for perspective, they put me in the Radio Hall of Fame last year, which I think was probably a bit early, but, okay, well, hold on a minute, wait a minute, wait. But people go, well, look at this guy, he's got it figured out. I mean, I've been rejected by over 30 radio stations that didn't even want me to do overnights at their station. And so my whole thing was, this is my story of how I have not succeeded. Everyone looks and goes, wow, he's got it all figured out. But then all my friends, like I had Chip Eston, who's in my book. He's Deacon on Nashville, the TV show. Yeah, he just cheered. Thank you, Chip. And so he came over to the house, and we were talking about his career. He bombed every audition ever. And you look at him and go, he's a good-looking guy. He's on a big TV show. And so I kind of had some ideas and some friends that would also take part in the book. My co-host, Amy, you know, she talked about her adoption. It took her 5 years. Chris Stapleton has a story in, Walker Hayes. So it's all these people that I'm around, and I get to be around. And I thought, wow, this is really a story that everyone needs to see, because I think we all feel alone when we fail because nobody's talking about it. Nobody's knowing who's sucking all the time, because I'm not out going, hey, guess what I did today? I really messed it up. I had a bad day. Mostly we just put our good stuff out there. And so then we feel alone when it's not good. And so that's really why I wrote this book. And so to answer your question, my favorite color is red, yeah.
In some ways, writing the first book was a very pressure-free environment. You had no clue if anybody was going to read it. Then it becomes a New York Times bestseller. Suddenly you realize people are going to read my next book. Was there a new pressure that came as you were typing at your computer and you're wondering, what are they going to think of this passage? How am I censoring myself? Is this affecting me in any way?
The pressure for me isn't that are people going to buy it. Like, I already feel guilty asking people that listen to my show or that will listen to my podcast or whatever to spend their hard-earned money. Like, I feel guilty about that. What I hope, though, is that it's somewhat of an investment. Like, you can read it and actually take something from it. Let's say it costs $16. But if in your life it's worth $22 once you're done, like, I feel good about that. And that's my goal, is that you read the book and you actually feel $16.01 worth. Okay. And so the pressure is never for me to sell anything or to hit a certain rating. It's always to make sure that my people actually feel like I didn't screw them out of something. Like, that really is the goal, because I don't like to feel like I've been screwed out of stuff or gypped out of something. And so even last night as I went to bed, I had anxiety going, oh man, what if people read this book and they're just disappointed? Because it's not exactly like the first book. It's not just my life story. It's basically the guide to a neurotic dude who just won't give up. And so, yeah, I'm anxious, not about it failing, because I'm okay with that, but about the people that I really talk to, about them feeling that, you know, I really put my best effort into helping their lives because people have helped my life.
About 10 paragraphs into the introduction, we get a realization from you that you had some work to do on your own on this subject matter of, like, conquering your biggest fear, reaching out, and that is, of course, with your estranged father. How far into plotting this book did you realize, I have some homework to do before I can go further?
Well, I've always known I've had a lot of homework to do. I have whole courses to take, not just homework. I've got universities to enroll in. But I just felt hypocritical. You know, I had written, what I would do is I would go places and I would just open my laptop. And again, I'm not a normal writer by any means. And so I would just open Microsoft Word and just write. And I would try to write 1,000 words a day. And many of those 1,000-word days are nowhere to be seen. So I would just write and write. And as I would start to write just kind of how I felt about things, I just felt like a fraud as I was telling people to really chase, for lack of a term, chase their dreams and face your fears and all the things that people tell you. I felt like a fraud. And I thought, man, why can I not shake this? Why do I kind of feel gross about this? And it was that I didn't do mine. Mm-hmm. And so as I started kind of drilling down into myself, how can I give advice to people on how to approach something if I'm not approaching it the exact same way? And I wanted to show in this book, too, that I'm also learning as I'm dispensing whatever knowledge this is. And so I said, man, I have to go and meet my biological father. And I made it really apparent in the book that I did it because of the book. Right. I think deep down I wanted to do it for other reasons. Sure. But so I did. I texted and called, and I've never had a conversation with a parent before. Right. My mom had a lot of drug issues, and she was there for a lot of my life early, but she was never all the way there. Mm-hmm. And I loved her, but we didn't have a communication. Right. So for me to sit with a parent, a real life parent, I just wanted to sit and have a conversation, and I did, and it was great. Yeah. And at that time, I wanted nothing else. But I felt like for me to write this book and not be a humongous hypocrite, I had to do what I was telling people to do. And that's why I started the book like that.
What I could not believe is that you did not go home and rest and take a good night's sleep and think about it. You are sitting in the airport writing that entry. How did you know stream of consciousness was sort of the way to approach this with your readers and your fans? I mean, I think a lot of people would have wanted to reflect or self-edit or kind of think about that a little bit longer. You kind of give everybody exactly what you're feeling in that moment. I
feel like with time, there's a bit of revisionist history. Right. And so I start to change things up in my mind about what really happened. Did I really punch him in the face? Stuff like that. Yeah, So I just wanted to be as accurate as possible. And so, and I write and live stream of conscious from my stand-up to the radio show to the book. And so I just felt like that was the most accurate way. And I wanted to write it in Arkansas because that's where it all happened. That's where I grew up.
I love, my favorite part of that passage is actually you talk about your relationship with nervousness and nerves. You love them. I think we think of people who've reached, the apex of a career, this huge height, that they're no longer nervous about what they do. And I'm wondering what still makes you nervous that you sort of love, that always keeps coming back to you.
I just get excited to do things that I love. Like, how many of us get to do something that we just genuinely love to do? And it doesn't have to be for a career. But at any time, if we get to go out and do something that we genuinely love and it means something to us, you get a little nervous. So I look at nerves as a positive thing, and only that there are only so many times in our life where things actually mean something to us. That means so much to us that our body starts to react differently. Because if it didn't mean something extra, our body wouldn't react in any different way. So I see nerves as it means something more. Now, there can be bad times when nerves come, but it still means something more than what it normally does. So, I'm doing a stand-up show on Friday night, and I think it's 3,000 people in a theater. And it's the biggest show I've ever sold out. Now, I've been doing that act since February, but I'm nervous because that means a lot to me. I've never sold that many tickets. Sure. And so now I'm going, am I going to disappoint 3,000 people? Is this a new record of disappointment? So to me, nerves, although it feels foreign to say, I enjoy them because we don't get to experience them that often. And we should really take note of these experiences that don't happen all the time. And so, yeah, they don't feel good sometimes, but I try to reflect quickly on why they don't feel good. And it's because it means something.
Right. I love that. Across this book, we learn about a lot of your failures, failed book plans, failed TV show pitches, all of these things. I'm curious, since you're learning from them and writing about all these things, do you have a favorite failure that has really catapulted you to the next level at something?
Well, all my big failures were with this awesome company who's right here on this microphone. I love very much. Well, let me just run through a few of them real quick. One time, I had this brilliant idea. I said, hey, Lunchbox, my co-host on the show. I said, hey, put some pantyhose on your head and go in and buy some gum into a store. Oh my God. I was like, this would be hilarious. Trust me, they'll love it. And so he goes in, he's on the air, he's like, hey man, I'm in, got pantyhose on, bought the gum, left. He leaves the store, nothing happened. I was like, well, how about that? Nobody cared, I guess. Yeah. Until the cops held him at gunpoint on the street and throw him in jail, right? It was a whole thing, terroristic threatening, it got dropped. But we were suspended for many weeks. It was really dumb. I would not do it again. I would not do it again. That being said, we were like 9th place, and we went to number 1 after that because I had people that believed in me. And I'm at the point in my life, too, where I'm not trying to prove people wrong anymore. I'm trying to prove people right. Like, the people that bet on me, I want to prove them right. So with that, and then I got fined $1 million about 2 years ago on the radio. Yeah, it was a thing. I'm pretty cool. I don't want to talk about that because I don't want to end up in Guantanamo, but I got fined $1 million. So those are the work things that have happened. But yeah, listen, I don't know anything that I have that didn't come with many, many, many failures.
Fight, Grind, Repeat, we should talk about the subtitle of this book, is not something you wrote for the first time here. It's something that you've said to yourself many, many times, and it came from a particularly bad spell of work where I can't even remember the number of days you'd been working in a row. I'm curious how often you really say that, you know, when you realize this is going to be something I can use as a totem and kind of go back to for comfort in life.
For me, more than just saying it, like I need to keep things around me. The same way I need to keep things not around me, like sugar, because I'll eat it all the time. Like I don't keep it in my house. I keep good things around me, like the people I work with. Even fight, grind, repeat really means nothing. It's just 3 words. But to me, I'd been at it pretty hard, I think for like 60 days in a row. And I just needed something to get through. And so I just needed a goal. The goal is what the fight was in my mind. Like, what am I fighting for? Like, what's the reason? And then the grind is all the little things that nobody sees. It's not glamorous, but that I'm doing in order to get to the end. And then it never works. So then can you repeat it? And can you continue doing that until it finally does work? And if you decide to stop doing it, it means you really didn't want it anyway. So those were the 3. And so I just started saying them. I started to write them on shirts. I had a little whiteboard in my room. Garth Brooks sent me a chair that said fight, grind, repeat on it. And so once Garth sends you something, you're in, right? You know? So for me, it can be any 3 words. It can be any phrase. But for me, that's just what I say. I need some sort of continuity in my life. I need the rails up. And for me, those were the 3 words that I needed.
That. Let's talk about some of the guests you have in this book. You mentioned some of them earlier, but we also get entries from Brooklyn Decker and Andy Roddick, 2 of your good friends who I know you got to know when you were in Austin.
Which, by the way, is weird to ask your really good friend to write in a book. Like these other people, Amy's like my best friend, and that was like, I pressured her to write in the book. Like, you have to write in the book. But Andy and Brooklyn, they're really close friends of mine. They're also public figures that I don't work with all the time. So for me, I was like, oh, do you want to write my book? But it's okay if you don't, but please do. But if you really don't, that's okay, but please do. But that's cool if you're not. You know, it's like one text back and forth.
And then you're like, also the subject is your worst failure.
Yes, and please write about your worst failure. So yeah, but I mean, they're close friends. It was people that, like Chris Stapleton didn't have to say yes. He just didn't. And Chip Eston, Walker Hayes, they were people who said, hey, I love the idea. I also don't hate you, Bobby, so I would be happy to be a part of this book. But, you know, I think for me, getting people that actually you see, like, wow, the splash. And you go, wow, the governor of Arkansas, to me, he wrote a passage in the book. By the way, only because I didn't run for governor. By the way, I like him a lot. I like Governor Hutchinson a lot. But he called me to the governor's mansion. And by the way, I'm from Arkansas. We don't get to go to the governor's mansion where I come from. And so because I'd been saying I was going to run for governor of Arkansas. And a little bit of me meant it. And I will be the governor one day. I will. And no, I will, just not right now. But I promise I'm going to be, and I might be president one day too. And so, thank you. And so, he calls me to ask if I was serious because I was starting to make all the news headlines in Arkansas. And he said, hey, are you serious about running? And I was like, well, I've been thinking about it. And when I told him no, I think he kind of was like, let me know what favor you need. And so he was very kind. And he talks about how he lost 2 humongous public races and he thought he was out of it. And they kind of called him back in after he lost to be the governor right prior before him winning. So it was stories like that when people think they're down and out and they really aren't. Like, I liked taking those and showing people that it's just not all awesome. As a matter of fact, 95% of it's not awesome. Even the awesomest people, it's not awesome most of the time. And so don't believe Instagram. That's the whole point.
I love that. I mean, you're pretty close with a lot of these people. These are conversations you would have in your normal life, but was anybody's entry surprising to you when they sent it back to you? You kind of couldn't believe this, or you didn't know this side of their sort of life and journey?
Well, the governor of Arkansas was fascinating to me because I don't know him on a super personal level. I thought Walker Hayes was very vulnerable because he talked about his struggle with alcohol and how he had been dropped. Like, it was kind of the duality of the personal and the professional and how they hit at the same time. And so I felt his was pretty moving. Whenever Andy sent me his, I was flying, I was reading it, and I started crying, like tearing up in it, because I was just like, this is someone so close to me who shared something so personal to him. And that's one of the friends that we don't have to talk. We don't talk on the phone. I don't talk on the phone. He doesn't talk on the phone. So we just don't talk on the phone. And so, but we always know, like, regardless of what's going on, like, I got you. And that was one of those instances where I just felt loved. And so that one moved me when he sent me his story, because he just didn't have to do it. I knew he only did it because he cared. So, yeah, that was it. That was the whole thing. And I see Pimp and Joy shirts out there too. And, like, thank you. I mean, for everybody that's here, I don't know why you're here, but I appreciate it so much. You guys have no idea. I sat with my team and said, nobody's coming to this. And they said, I think some people will come. And I said, really? I don't think anybody's going to come. And they said, just trust us. And not only to see people out here, but to see, and if you don't know the show, we have this thing called Pimp and Joy, and we don't keep any of the money, but we sell shirts. What we were able to do a week ago was we were able to take these shirts, and she's wearing one right here. It's a gray retro Pimp and Joy shirt. And we were able to buy service dogs for military veterans. And they're $20,000 each. And so they go and they serve overseas, and they come back with PTSD or brain injury or physical injury. And it's not like there's just $20,000 to throw out and buy a dog. So I feel like I've been given a platform by these people, my people, in order to do what I can do and what we can do as a show. And so, like this shirt specifically that she's wearing on the front row, we were able to buy 6 service dogs, $120,000. We did that in just a few days. So thank you. And if you're watching this, like, I appreciate it. And Amy, my co-host, is right there. And so, yeah, that's a thing. So I just want to acknowledge that, and that I really appreciate. And I see you up there with the shirt on too. I see you back there.
I love that. In that light, we do have a couple of questions in the audience that I think that we're going to take right now.
Do we have any questions? Yes.
Over here. Hey, Bobby.
Hi.
So writing process for your second book, how is that different than your first? Was there like a certain mindset you had to get into?
The truth of writing for me is I just wrote a whole lot and sent a whole lot off. Like she's a real writer. Like that's someone that you ask about writing, because she's a real writer. She writes for like fancy things, you know? And for me, I just opened my laptop and would just write and then send. And then I wouldn't look at it. And then I would get probably a quarter of it back, and it all had red lines through it, meaning it's not good. And so I would have to fix it. But my process, and I've been asked by people before, how do you write a book? I have no idea. I know how to write on Microsoft Word, and I know how to misspell a lot of things. Even the spell check. In my first book, there were things, I misspelled so many words that there were misspellings in my book.
Spell check doesn't get everything.
It was in my book. Like, I must have misspelled all the words because it had been through like 5 layers.
They gave up on you.
They were just like, hey, well, we're done. Just print the book. So I don't have the normal how to write a book. But what people ask me all the time, how do I get started? I tell them, not just a book, but anything, just get in it. Because the longer you take not doing something, that's wasted time where you're not learning. Even if you go in the wrong direction, you're learning something. Because I've gone the wrong direction in many ways. But I've always learned from it. But I've just always kept my head in the game. Or as my stepdad used to say, I just, would always keep my hook in the water all the time. Even if it was the wrong hook. Even if I wasn't in a lake. The hook was always in the water. And so if you want to write, just start writing and sending it to people. Not to me, though, because I don't want to get sued if I write something very similar later.
And then we have one more right over here.
Hey, so Amy shares a story in the book about her kids. What was that? Why was that so important to include?
Oh, well, hey, Amy, come up here. This is my co-host, Amy, everybody. I'll go and then I'll give you the mic for a second. Her kids in that story, it was 5 years of my life. It was very trying on me when she adopted these kids. I just want you to know. Amy is the closest friend that I've had in the past 10 years of my life. And when she went through the adoption process with her husband, I was involved, but not nearly the level that she was in any way. But our show really took hold and, basically rebuilt an orphanage and showed them how to sustain themselves. So I wanted Amy to talk, because Amy had domestically tried to adopt. She tried everything, and it just didn't work. But I'm going to let her tell, hello, there's a microphone coming out of the ground. So why was that story important to you to share?
Well, I think when you talk to me about, that's probably when I think of anything that I've fought hard for, fighting for 2 kids for 5 years, that's like...
And not getting them over and over.
And not getting them. And we were so committed. I think, and a huge, like the show being involved, and then there's some of our bosses even in here, like iHeart people in general, my iHeart family. Like there were so many times I had to take off from work. A lot of people don't have that luxury to go down to Haiti, take their time away from their job to go fight for their kids, which is, they would give me I would be like, Bobby, I just feel like I need to go do this to try to advance my kids along. And he would be like, if you need to leave tomorrow, go tomorrow. We got you covered. And not everybody has that luxury. So, I mean, I even have goosebumps when I say it because I'll be forever grateful to know that, like, I didn't have to quit my job to go do that. And some people may be in that position. And I had a work family that covered for me. So I got to go down there, and that's what I would have to do. I would go just sit and wait until someone would meet with me. I would go down there and network to try to meet people that had connections with other people that knew people whose cousin was somebody else. And then, I mean, we were committed to even move down there if we needed to. And I told Bobby, I was like, I don't know if I'm going to, but I feel like it never got to that point. But Bobby would have been like, okay, if you've got to move down there, like, the show will be here when you get back. So, like, we wouldn't have the kids, or it wouldn't have been as easy for us to go down there and fight for the kids if I didn't have such an awesome work family.
This is Amy, everybody. Thank you. And again, they're just talking about the failure part of it real quick. They tried to have a baby. However you do that, I haven't done it in a long time, so I don't know. But they tried to have a baby. Then they tried to adopt domestically, but they kept moving because their husband was in the military. And when you move, your home study changes. And then they tried, and then the international they were in, and they changed the law right in the middle of it. And so it was a five.
Like everything that could go wrong went wrong. But they're here now. We finally have them.
And she just stayed with it. She stayed with it. So thank you.
I don't know how to top that with another question, but.
Oh, you can never top Amy. I always save her for the end, and then it's just like, and then game over. But, everybody that's here, if you're watching this online or listening, I wrote this book so maybe people could see that what they were fighting through wasn't an isolation. It's not just them. Just because somebody's not talking about it doesn't mean it's not happening. And I know failure is this thing like, oh, look at us, we're talking about failure. But, man, I mean, it's happened to me so many times where I thought, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get up again. I don't know if I'm going to switch it up. But I think we all feel like that. But the reason I stuck with it is because I knew I wanted it. And I always tell people, if you feel like giving up and you do give up, that means you didn't really want it anyway. You just haven't found what you're searching for yet. And so that was it. I hope people read it and they find a nugget in it that they can take and hopefully be worth $16.01. Yeah.
You guys, the book is out today. We're going to stop talking, so we got a performance coming up from Low Cash, which Bobby's going to tell you a little bit about. But the book is out today. Go pick it up.
Hey, thank you. By the way, hold on a minute. She's awesome, and I should be interviewing her about writing, not her about me. This is like a college graduate interviewing a kindergartner, being like, how are you so smart?
That's what I'm going to tell people. That's what I'm going to say it was like for me.
So thank you so much for standing up here. And let's clap for Madison because it's awesome.